So we're doing verse 12 to 14. So 9 to 11 was one set of verses. 12 to 14 are other set of verses. They're exactly the same, other than two words in each of them. Where's that? Okay. So let me show you the comparison. Where is it? So this is the comparison of the two set of verses. 9 was Andham tama pravishyanti ye vidyayam upasati tato bhuyai vati tamu yayu vidyayam rataha. It was talking about knowledge and ignorance. Now the next verse, the 12th verse is Andham tama pravishyanti ye shambhutim upasati tato bhuyai vati tamu yayu sambhutyam rataha. So exactly the same thing, the highlighted words have been changed. Similarly, in 10th verse was Anya devahur vidyaya, nya dahura vidyaya, iti sushruma dhiranam yenastad vichakshare. 13th in comparison is Anya devahu sambhavat, Anya dahur asambhavat, iti sushruma dhiranam yenastad vichakshare. So the similar words. Similarly, the third set. Vidyam cha yes tad vedo bhayam saha, avidyayam mrityu tirtva, vidyayam amritum ashnute. Sambhutim cha vinasham cha yastad vedo bhayam saha vinashena mrityum tirtva sambhutyam vritum ashnute. So what I wanted to just show you was that it's this similar set of words, exact same. The topic that is being discussed is different. In this in 9 to 11, it's talked about knowledge, and in 12 to 14, there will be a discussion on demigods and the impersonal aspect. Right. So this is just a overview of the three verses we are starting today. So let me go to the verse 12. Where is that? Verse number 12. So this is, yes, okay. Andham tama pravishyanti ye sambhutim upasate tai tato bhuya ivate tamho yayu sambhutyam rataha. So what did we read in the last verse, 11th verse? What was the discussion we had in the 11th verse?
We broadly speaking, we understood that taking vidya and avidya together, it can lead us to immortality. And there vidya meaning Krishna consciousness and avidya meaning bodily maintenance.
Okay, that's a good point. Bodily maintenance, yes. And why do we need to practice them side by side? That was a discussion we had, right? Why do we have to do it side by side? So in one sense, is this Upanishad contradicting what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sardharman Parityaja? Is there a contradiction?
How is it to make our life perfect and then we're able to give it to others?
Is that a question or an answer? Is that you're asking me a question, Amadi, or are you answering my question?
I'm trying to give an answer, but I'm not sure.
Okay, who else can share any thoughts? What else do we have?
Prabhuji, what did you ask? Sorry, Prabhuji. Would you mind repeating again?
Why do we have to do these things side by side?
Knowledge for bodily maintenance and knowledge for
Yes.
pursuing Krishna consciousness. That's what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking, yes. Why is to be done side by side? And why does this lead to immortality?
Prabhuji, because we need to do our prescribed duty, right? We cannot just give up everything and just take sannyas, because till the time we don't have a control on our unfulfilled desires, till the time we don't have control on our senses, even if we try to take the path of Krishna consciousness completely, we will not be totally fixed on that. We'll still be, and I think so in chapter, I'm forgetting the chapter where they had talked about, right, a difference between a sannyasi and a tyagi. So you cannot be just renouncing anything when you have not controlled your senses. So, and in order to control your senses, you have to be fully control of it. And in order to control, you have to perform your slowly you have to keep performing your prescribed duty, keeping Krishna in the center, and slowly you will be elevated to a platform where you will no more be attached to the sense gratification, and you reach to a platform where you'll be 100% committed to following Krishna consciousness. So there's a time you have not reached that platform of prema. You have to continue doing all these processes in 8 process before you reach the ninth one. So that is my understanding from.
Okay, that's a good way. Yes. If we in an ocean, we need to know two things: how to ride the boat, and we need to know where the land is, where I'm going. So if we only have spiritual knowledge, but as you rightly said, we have to live in this world. So we need bodily knowledge also. It's not atyahara. We're not over endeavoring to maintain ourselves, but we need to know the basic knowledge. Otherwise, we'll not be able to live in this world. Right? Material knowledge, not to become happy. That's not the goal of the material knowledge being referred to in verse 11. It is to how to live purposefully. Material knowledge helps us navigate the problems of life. That's something we discussed. And that should eventually help us, our consciousness to rise. That is why the Vedas, they talk of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So if we have a proper dharma, if we have done proper dharma, if our character is good, then when we go out into the world and do artha, then that will be based on that dharma. And then the kama that we fulfill will be for our maintenance. It won't be for our sense gratification. And then eventually we will come to the level of moksha. But if my dharma itself is flawed, then I'll never be able to get to moksha. And because I have this body, I have to live with this. Prabhupada used the phrase, making the best use of a bad bargain. That's what it means, best use of a bad bargain. Because at some point or the other in our life, we will be frustrated. And if we don't have spiritual knowledge, then our material will for sure be destroyed, but then we'll also not attain the spiritual part. So we need to have this side by side. We all are fearful in this world. Bhayam dviti abhiniveshata syad shadapi tasyo viprayo smriti. So we are fearful in this material world because we have moved away from Krishna. Viprayo smriti. Smriti means remembrance. Viprayo means it's turned away from Krishna. And I'm trying to make myself happy in this material world. But that's impossible. That's impossible. So how to live in this world while looking towards or while living with a spiritual consciousness is important. So that when we die, then we would have lived this material world in a way that was conducive for our spiritual progression. We cannot, as you know, rightly that sannyasi and tyagi part, right? So we cannot, if somebody takes artificial sannyas, they will surely suffer. That's why nowadays sannyas is not given to people. So yes, we have to do it together. And so this is for understanding that 95%, 99% of the people are grastas now. ISKCON at one point was a temple religion. Everybody used to live in the temple, serve in the temple. But now it's not. We are all grastas. We are working 40 hours a week or even more and taking care of family, paying our mortgages. But yes, we have to live here. Yeah. But the bigger goal is Savai Pungsham Paro Dharmo Yatho Bhakti Radhokshaje. Bhakti towards Krishna. So yeah, so that is needed. That's why we need them simultaneously. Best. But once we reach the level of a pure devotee, then we don't have to do it. But Krishna even says that there are some activities of this material world that even a pure devotee does not give up. He says that in the 18th chapter, 5th verse, that even a pure devotee does not give up sacrifice, charity. So there are some things a pure devotee also continues to do. For example, Prabhupada was doing the biggest sacrifice, chanting. Right? He was always doing it. over time. So yes, so even if somebody reaches that level, they continue to do some of it. Yes. And the moment we misuse this energy, we start suffering. There was this, I don't know if you have heard of him. There was a football player, American football player. His name was Aaron Hernandez. He was in his 20s probably, but he came from a very disturbed background. His dharma, as I was saying, was not properly established. He became a rich guy. He became a millionaire in his 20s. Right? But then, because his foundation was not based on strong ground, he started taking drugs. Right? And he started taking drugs, and then some hallucinogens or whatnot. And then he eventually ended up murdering somebody. And then he was put in jail for a lifetime. And then within a couple of years, he hanged himself. Right? And he died. And when he died, he carved, what was that number? 316 of Bible. So 316 is a very famous verse of Bible which talks about how Jesus Christ is the only Son and whoever believes him will never perish. That's the verse. So he put that. So even though he was claiming himself to be a religious person, but because his dharma was completely misinterpreted, his life was miserable. And obviously his next life is going to be miserable also. Right? So if we start to misuse what we've been given to us. So instead of just bodily maintenance, when we start over endeavoring with the Ishavasya principle, then we suffer. There's a disease these people get, the football players get. It's called CTE. It's called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I'm not sure if I mentioned that last time. And they keep banging their head, so the brain gets diseased. So it's not human to bang heads with each other. But at the same time, if you see a woodpecker is banging his or her head in wood to make a hole in that wood. But then the woodpecker has a system which protects its brain. So even though it's practically banging onto a wood 1,000 times a minute, it's still his mind. There's no the woodpecker doesn't get CTE, no neurodegenerative disorder, because that's what it's meant for. So when we use what's meant for us in the right way, then that's the right way to live our lives. That's the right dharma to do. Okay, so let's come to 12th verse. So those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so to the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. Similar concepts, those who are engaged in avidya, they enter into the darkest region. Like they're ignorant, they don't know anything. But then there are people who, despite knowing, still are behaving in a wrong way. Those people they are even actually worse, as we read in the 9th verse. So in here, it's demigod and impersonal aspect, impersonal absolute that's being referred to here. Right? So to understand the meaning, and I think I mentioned this in the past also. To understand the meaning of any word, we need what its literal meaning is and what the context is. Right? So semantics is a study of meaning of languages, meaning in languages. You can apply it to an entire text or to a single word. Right? For example, the word destination and last stop, technically they mean the same thing, but they can have very different meanings also. There's subtle shades to it. Right? So the reason I'm bringing is that sambhutim asambhutim. Right? So now you can sambhuti, like it can be demigods, and asambhuti can mean without demigods. But we need an acharya to tell us what exactly it means. That's why we have Prabhupada here. And so there are two primary kinds of people who get deviated from Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the destination of those two is being talked about here. And then Prabhupada Where was it? That was. Sure, where was it? Okay. So the way Prabhupada defines it, that the first three paragraphs, he talks about how demigods and even rishis misunderstand the absolute truth. And then he talks about how demigod worshippers, they're staying in this dark material world. And then impersonalists are worse, they go to the darkest region of hell. So Prabhupada talks about these three aspects in the purport. So let's look at the first aspect Prabhupada is talking about. Where was it? So Prabhupada is quoting that the absolute personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna states, Name vidu suragana, prabhavam na maharshi, aham adihi devana, maharshini cha sarvasha. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. For in every respect, I am the source of the demigods and sages. So the reason Prabhupada is bringing up this concept is that some people think demigods worship is very high, is an elevated thing. But Prabhupada wants to establish that Krishna himself says that even demigods don't understand. How are they going to teach you about the ultimate goal of life if they don't even know who I am? Right? So Prabhupada is bringing that concept up. What is that? Yes, so he's bringing that concept up. And even Arjun, he accepts this. Later this is the second 10th chapter, second verse. But even Krishna Arjun in the later on verses in the same chapter, he says, "Sarvam etadritam manne vanyanma vadasi keshva nahi te bhagwan vyakti vidur deva na danva." That he also says that I accept the truth that you're giving me, but even the demigods don't understand you. Right? Then who can know Krishna? That Name Vidu Suragar, nobody's there. So it's only by Krishna's causeless mercy that we can know him. Right? So there are two different points in this. So what Prabhupada is talking about here. So the first is that when Arjun is saying that Krishna, I accept who you are, and I also acknowledge that it is not easy to understand you. So when we accept Krishna, it is not that we have understood everything about Krishna. There'll always be something that we'll not be able to understand. So rather than saying that it is fault, we just suspend the judgment about it. For example, we hear that, in the spiritual world, there is no anxiety. But it's hard to imagine, it's hard to conceive that. So doubts can be at different levels. But then that doesn't mean if we have doubt, doesn't mean make something false. Right? So even though demigods don't understand us, even I don't understand Krishna. But then because I'm sincere, then I can expect Krishna's mercy coming to me. And there is some amount of purification that is required in order for us to understand what Krishna is teaching. We cannot have what do you call that? A half-hen logic, Prabhupada used to call it, Ardha Kukut Nyaya. That, I'll take this part when I read the Bhagavad Gita or the Shastras, but I won't take this part. Right? Just like I'll take that part of the hen that lays golden eggs, but I won't take that part of the hen that eats because I don't want to feed the hen. So we cannot understand the scriptures by that half-baked way. So the Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood that way. So what Arjun is saying when he's talking in the 10th chapter, 4th verse, he's saying that the way to understand Krishna is accepting all in total. Nothing here is false. Or there's no speculation, there is no exaggerated claim. It's just that it's hard for me to understand right now. Right? That's why sometimes many people have asked me that how should we read the sections? Like, for example, when somebody's reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Some sections are boring, some sections seem so fantastical, right? So some sections seem more interesting than the others. Right? But if we go through something repeatedly, even though it's difficult, we just keep reading it. Even if we are reading and feeling it's not entering our heart, we should still understand that it is a cleansing process. And time spent in the transcendental association of books, these books that Prabhupada has given us, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Isopanishad, that will eventually transform our consciousness. And we will see, as we continue to read, we will start seeing more and more beauty in the sections which are harder to understand. which were earlier. Right? So in order to see beauty in such sections or consciousness, our consciousness has to be refined. And that takes place through the successive reading, successive submissive reading. And gradually we will be able to relish in the future. So sometimes people, somebody once asked me recently that, oh, I've read the whole Bhagavad Gita. What should I read next? No, I suggested them go back and read Bhagavad Gita again. Whenever you read the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find something new. So Prabhupada is establishing here in this section, in the beginning section, that demigod worship by itself is hellish. But then, if some people think that I can get complete knowledge, let me tell you, they don't even understand, they themselves don't know Krishna. You all can still hear me, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, sorry, I was getting a message that my connection is unstable. Yes, so Prabhupada is establishing that demigod worship, it's hellish for sure. And the reason because it's hellish is because you are trying to put faith in something. They themselves don't know who's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't have understood. We have so many examples across scriptures where we see Indra in Vrindavan. We recently celebrated Govardhan Puja. Indra thought that, oh, who's this kid? Right? Brahma does so many things. He told Shiva to go. Shiva was born out of Brahma's anger, and then he said, "You go procreate, and create life bring living entities on this world." And Shiva started bringing people like himself in a mode of anger and passion. So he had to stop him. So yes, so there's always mistake. Right? So theme that and this theme that the absolute truth cannot be understood even by gods is very well rooted in the Shastras. The first verse of Bhagavatam, Janmadi aste yato अन्वयाद इतरतस चाथेश्व अभिज्ञ स्वराट तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदि कवये मुयंति yat suraya. So muyanti yat suraya means that even the demigods don't know you. So that's Prabhupada establishing that for us in the beginning. That this is the reason you don't put your faith in demigods, because they themselves don't know who Krishna is. Their knowledge is incomplete. And Prabhupada is referring to that 10th chapter verse. And then Arjun also confirms that. And it's only by Krishna's mercy that we understand that. And Krishna's mercy comes through when we follow the orders of the spiritual master, Acharya. Then the mercy comes, then the mercy flows. The service is very important. Prabhupada has given us devotional service. He didn't say just devotion. It has to be devotional service. Then we get that mercy. That opens up the knowledge for us to understand. Okay, so that's the concept of demigods that Prabhupada is highlighting right in the beginning to us. And then he talks of try to leave. Okay, yes. So that was one part of demigods. And then he talking about impersonalists, so negation concept. So negative conception or definition of the absolute by negation, right? So what does this negation mean, right? Well, let's look at it differently. Let me think. So when we negate something, negation is negation means you are saying not neti. Neti means no, not this, not this. Oh, is this Bhagavan? No, this is not God. Is this material nature God? No, this is material nature is also not God. So all these things we keep saying, oh, not this, and then we think, oh yeah, this might be Bhagavan. So that eventually puts us on an impersonal platform. That eventually we keep looking for it, and then that impersonal aspect comes into the picture. And that's what Prabhupada is highlighting here, that negation does not give us the complete picture. For example, the Bhagavad Gita does not reject the impersonal aspect. It accepts, Krishna himself says in the 12th chapter, right? That in the beginning itself, he says that Yetu akshara manir deshyam avyaktam parupasate sarvatra gam achintam cha kutastham ashlam dhruvam sanniyamyendriya gravam sarvatra samabuddhaya Ye prapnuvanti mam eva sarva bhuta hite ratha. They also attain me. So just to clarify, Prabhupada is talking about impersonalism here. Krishna himself is saying that impersonalism is acceptable. So can somebody tell me, we have discussed this in the past, what impersonalism is Prabhupada saying is incomplete, is wrong? And then which part of impersonalism is right, which Krishna is talking about and saying that they also reach. So does somebody remember the concepts which we discussed about impersonalism, Mayavadi, and all that stuff?
Prabhuji, what I remember, impersonalists are two types, right? Brahmavadi and Mayavadi. And Brahmavadi is like the four Kumaras, Sanatan Goswami. It is out of ignorance. They don't know who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the moment they get this realization, like the moment four Kumaras got the smell of the lotus feet of Vishnu, they immediately understand that he's the Supreme Personality. And same goes for Sanatan. But the Mayavadis, they understand, but they don't want to accept that Krishna can be a personal form, he can be a two-handed form. For them, it is all about the effulgence merging into the effulgence. So they cannot even though they have that understanding. They are learned folks. They are they have the good understanding of the scriptures, the shastras, and they understand that that Krishna is the supreme, but they don't want to accept it, and they don't want to accept the two-handed form of Krishna as.
Yes, that's a good point to bring up. Yes. So, yes, so that's a difference between Mayavadi and Brahmavadi. That's the difference there. Because Krishna repeatedly tells that in Bhagavad Gita that I'm the Supreme. In the 7th chapter, he says, Mata Paratram Nanme, Kinti Jasti Dhananjaya. In 10th chapter, he says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. In 15th chapter, he says, Yo Mam Evam Asamudo Janati Purushottama. Sa sarva vidbhajate mam sarva bhavena bhav. So he keeps repeatedly telling everybody that I am the supreme, right? But then if somebody, despite knowing that, still they don't accept that, then they become the Mayavadis. Because they say that the reason they are called Mayavadis is because they say that when Krishna comes into this material world, he's also entrapped in Maya. That is why they're called Mayavadi. Right? And you rightly pointed out the difference between both of them. Brahmavadis are people who don't know. They're simply in their simplicity, they don't know it. It's not as if they are forcing it to the, oh no, there is no Bhagavan, there is no form. And we see that repeatedly in Bhagavatam, again and again, that comes in the 3rd chapter when the 4 Kumaras, they meet Vishnu in Vaikuntha after they have cursed the Vijay and Jan Vijay. And there is a beautiful verse, Tasya Arvinda Nayanasya Padarvinda Kinjal Kamishri Tulasi Makaranda Vayu. That Kinjal Kamishri Tulasi Makaranda Vayu. That when that Vayu, that the smell, the air is coming towards them, what does that air contain? Is the smell of Tulasi and saffron and sorry, not saffron. Tulsi, saffron is also there, but what's that? What am I thinking? Chandan.
Chandan.
Yeah. So all that makes that when that smell comes to them, and then they understand, oh my God, what is this beautiful smell, right? Then they understand that the Bhagavan has a form. So yeah, so they are Brahmavadi. And similarly, yes, we talked about you mentioned about Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami, the moment he was born, he just ran to the forest, and but then there he heard those beautiful verses glorifying Krishna, right? Aho bakiyam stan kalukutam jigham saya pavayam apiya sadvi lebhe gatim dhatri uchitam tatovayam kam vadayalum sharanam vrajema. That who is this person who's so much more, who's merciful that a demoness comes to kill him, and he just looks at the part that she came as a mother. So those people are Brahmavadis. But then Mayavadis are those, they consider Krishna's form as material. And Krishna calls them Abuddhaya, he calls them Mudha, and he says they take shelter of demoniac nature. So Bhagavad Gita Krishna clearly says that yes, impersonalism is okay, but then sorry, not yeah, impersonalism is okay. Impersonalism means Brahmavad is okay. However, that too is also uh, very complicated. Klesho adiktaras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam. In the 12th chapter, 5th verse of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that. Klesho adiktaras. It's too much misery on this path. It's not that this path will not bring you to me. It will bring you, but the path is very hard. Deha vadhiravapate, especially for embodied beings like a human being. So now, so if you look at this verse, how Prabhupada is explaining it is that demigod worship is okay. It's like, okay, fine, you're going to somebody superior, but those superior themselves don't know that they are not the ones supreme. There's somebody beyond them also. But then when you talk of impersonalists, they are worse because they know Krishna is Bhagavan, but they still say, no, no, Krishna, you also are in this material world. When you come here, your form is also material. So, so Krishna, what Krishna does in Bhagavad Gita, it offers us a multi-level spirituality. We've talked about it. If you cannot try to practice bhakti. That's the best. If you cannot practice bhakti, go to jnana. If you can't do jnana, do karma, dhyana. We keep doing that, right? So, so our Vedic culture is of flexibility. Uh, it's a progression, and that's also something to understand. So yes, the negation part that Prabhupada is referring to, it can also be at two levels. So we talked about this one aspect, that it's Prabhupada's Pradhan Mantra says, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. So Nirvishesha are people who believe God does not have a form. And Shunyavadi are those who say there is no God. Voidism. There is nothing beyond this life. Some sects of Buddhism, they believe that. So even when they see the form of the Lord, they don't accept it. They accept it as material. Right? But our Shastras very clearly give us this knowledge that Lord has a form. Right? And you can quote different verses if somebody comes and questions you. One verse I have told you a few times is from Isopanishad itself, right? Which comes in the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th verse, where the 15th verse is. Right? That what's that verse? Let's look at it. I just clicked out. 12, 13, 14, 15. Here. Hiranmayena patrena satya sthapita mukham tattvam pushana pavranu satya dharmaya drishtate. Mukham, the word mukham is here, face. So this is one verse that you can always refer to if somebody comes and says to you that, oh no, there is no God. You can always use this word and show that no, Shastras are saying. Similarly, you can quote from Srimad Bhagavatam also. Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many verses. Like I told you about that verse about Kinjal Kamishri Tulasi Makarandamai. That's one verse that they say, oh yeah, God is a form. Then in the third canto, where what's his name? Hiranyaks was fighting with the boar incarnation of the Lord. When he's fighting the boar incarnation of the Lord, in the third canto, in the 18th chapter, this is about the fighting. And there is a word used, tudyamano. So tudyamano means Lord felt pain when Hiranyaks said abusive words to the Lord. So it's mentioned that Lord gets pain. Let's quickly look at that verse. It's a very nice verse. Read a page 3:18. This is there.
Are you sharing, Prabhu?
I just shared it. Yes. You can see it now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, now I'm sharing. Yes. So here, oh yeah, this is the verse. Right? Look at this. I really like this verse. It says, although the Lord was pained by the shaft-like abusive words of the demon, he bore the pain. But by seeing that the earth on the ends of his tusk was frightened, he rose out of the water, just like an elephant emerges with its female companion when assailed by an alligator. So the word that Sukadeva Goswami is using is tudyamano. And tudyamano means being pained. So there are ample evidence across Shastras that tell us that God has a form. However, even we are even advanced, like what Mahaprabhu gave us, Achinta Bheda Tattva. We don't reject that God has, okay, fine, because God is complete. He is Purna. If he wishes, he can live in an impersonal form. If he wishes, he can live in a form. So we don't ignore the impersonal aspect. But the Mayavadis, they say no, there is only impersonal aspect. There is no person. That is the problem. We don't say no, yeah, because God is complete. He can do whatever he likes. But if I try to put a limit to God, no, you can only come in this form, not in this. That's the problem with other sections of the other followers, like Christianity. Oh, no, only Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you're going to hell. So that concept is not there in our bhakti process. Right? We are available. Krishna is ready to come to anybody in the form they like, as long as the person is sincere and has devotion in the heart. Right? That's the important part. So yes, so I just quoted a couple of things for you, so that if somebody asks you a question about God having a form, you can always refer to Shastra and answer those people back. Yes, so that's what Prabhupada is saying. So yes, the negation part, I was referring to the negation part. So the negation part is two aspects, at two levels. So we just talked of one level, that is Nirvishesha Shunyavad. Right? And then the one another thing people jump to conclusions is that spiritual life means negation of the material world. Right? That's another problem. That's another negation aspect that you can think about it. That, oh, forget this material world. This material world is Maya. I'm not going to come. So that's another challenge people have. But there is no reciprocation in negation, right? We have to have an enlightened engagement with this world because it's all is Krishna's energy. And for the Sankhya, right? Sankhya Yoga. So Sankhya Yoga means to measure everything. Right? We look around everything and we can analyze it and understand what it is actually, what is it made of. There are 24 elements in this world and so forth. So we come to the conclusion, oh, nothing is beautiful in this world. It's just a combination of different elements, right? So Sankhya helps us getting detached from this world, but then we also have to attach ourselves to Krishna, right? So that's understand. So negation doesn't help us by itself. Buddhist philosophy ends at Sankhya Yoga, that all desires are a source of misery, but then they don't know about spiritual desires. So yeah, so that's what Prabhupada is referring to as negation here. So understand. So now Prabhupada is fully, first of all, establishing what demigod worship is, what absolute, what the absolute impersonalism is, and all that. So he's clearly establishing that, and he's clearly telling us also that none of these will help you. They both are going to take us downhill. Demigod worship is dark. Having a faith in impersonalism is even worse. Mayavadi. Okay. And then Prabhupada is giving us the essence. So the devotees of Krishna, by dint of their surrendering unto him and their unalloyed devotion, can know that he is the absolute person, that everything emanates from him. Right. And then, okay, so Prabhupada is referring to demigod worship. Yeah, so it's only a temporary relief by demigod worship. Whereas somebody who worships Krishna, they already get all whatever the demigods have. Yasyasta bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gune satra samasate sura harau abhaktasta kuto mahadguna manorathe nasti dhavato bahi. In the fifth canto, 18th chapter, there is this verse, Narad Muni is speaking. He's saying, Yasyasta bhakti bhagavati akinchana. That when you have bhakti towards akinchana, towards Krishna, then samasate sura. Whatever is there in demigods, all the qualities come. But then if you use harau abhaktasya, there is no hari in the bhakti, then even if we might be perfect, but then still we are incomplete. So it's just temporary. But demigod worship is temporary. And so rather than that, we worship the absolute truth, personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is all attractive and who can bestow upon us complete freedom from material bondage by taking us back home, back to Godhead.
Prabhuji,
Yes, please.
Prabhuji, in the Bhagavad Gita, if I remember correctly, Krishna never negates the worship of the demigods, right? In fact, he says that demigods are his limb, different part of the body, and he also says, right, that demigods are like his administrators, and they have been assigned to do specific jobs, and he has given them the power to give the benediction. So in Bhagavad Gita, it does not say that way that unintelligent people are the one who worship. In fact, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita what I just mentioned. So how do we relate this with Bhagavad Gita, what we learned?
I didn't get your point. You're saying that
Prabhuji,
demigod.
what I'm saying in this case, it says, right, only unintelligent, bewildered person driven by strong desire. But in Bhagavad Gita, it does not say that, right? In Bhagavad Gita, what we learned was we were talking about demigod worship and all, right? It was mentioned in one of the places. I'm not remembering the shloka definitely, but that these demigods are nothing but the limb of a different part of the Supreme Personality, and they are the one Krishna has assigned them as his representative to orchestrate various administrative work in this cosmic manifestation, like Agni Devta is there, Indra Devta is there. So they have been assigned various tasks, right? And they have also been empowered with the benediction, because the material people, to quickly satisfy their senses, they need some type of benediction, right? So for that, it's Krishna who has empowered them. So when Krishna himself has empowered these demigods, and and they are his representative, why are we saying why are we lowering the people who are worshipping these demigods?
Okay, so let's look at that sections then. Krishna talks of demigod worship in two places in Bhagavad Gita. There's a 7th chapter and there is a 9th chapter. 7th chapter, Krishna talks about this in the
He talks some places, right, Prabhuji?
so he says
demigods in various
in the
parts.
no, so he tells that he actually, there is a similar verse in this Bhagavad Gita. Kames teste dhita prapadyante nya devta tam tam niyamam astaya prakriti. Let me open up that section. Niyata swaya. That kame is out of desires when you prapadyante anya devata. So people who are under kam, who are under the illusion, those people worship demigods. Let's open up that section. Let's look at it. Okay, let me find that. There's that. So I think it's 7th chapter. Here it is. So let's look at this. So this is 720. So this is one part of the section of Bhagavad Gita. So this is 720 to, I think it's 723. Krishna will talk of demigods. So let's just look at it quickly. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Let's look at next verse. Next verse, please open.
Prabhuji, I think so. I was referred more from the perspective where it is. I think so. It's where chapter Bhaktaram Yadmitapa, somewhere that is the one where we are saying whatever you offer to the demigod, it will be coming to Krishna because it's the supreme personality. I think so. In that part, they are means talking more about Krishna. Sorry, demigods, and saying that they are demigods of various part, where part of the body of Krishna.
So
Where we
if
have
you're
this Bhaktaram Yadmitapa.
so that's the last verse of the 5th chapter. So there,
If I'm
Krishna is not saying, that's the last verse, right? So the Bhuktanam Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vritsati. So here also is Krishna saying is that knowing me, the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifice, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. So he's not glorifying demigod worship anywhere. Krishna doesn't do that. And you might find a verse, we can discuss
Not
it.
Prabhu, I did not say glorifying. I was saying.
Yes, tell me, what were you saying? You were saying that Krishna is saying that they are my limbs, and there is no harm. Yes,
Yes.
I can't remember a verse on top of my mind where Krishna says it. If you find it, that's good. Send it to me. But what Krishna is saying is that that's okay. Yes, you are my limbs, is fine. But if you just consider the limbs as supreme, then you are in less intelligence. That's what Krishna is saying to us. That's what the verse Isopanishad is saying. So it's not about what demigods are, what Krishna is. It's about in which way am I approaching that. That's what creates the problem. So Krishna keeps telling us, Mudha, that if you worship demigod, like the section we were just looking at, right, the seventh chapter. So there Krishna is saying that he's not calling the demigods anything wrong. He's saying that those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods. Right? Surrendering. Yes. There's a surrendering. That, you are everything for me, I'm surrendering to you. Approaching demigods is not a problem. Even gopis go to Katyayani Devi but then what do they ask to Katyayani Devi? Please let Krishna be my husband. Right? So there is the problem of going to demigods is not the problem. The problem is with what intention are we going to the demigods? In the next verse, Krishna says, right, that I am in everyone's heart as super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady, so they can devote himself to that particular deity. Right? And then he keeps going up to 23rd. And he says, men of small intelligence worship demigods. Nowhere it's not that Krishna is calling demigods any names or saying that they are stupid fools or something. He's saying that if you approach with that mentality, you become a foolish person. That's the challenge here. That's the thing to understand. Right? And then let's look at another section also quickly. There's another section, 9th chapter. Again, Krishna talks of demigod worship. It's in the similar numbers somewhere. 20th verse, I think it starts again. Please open. Why is it slow? My internet is super slow. Okay, 9th chapter, 20th verse. Yeah, here. Those who study the Vedas, drink the Soma juice, seeking heavenly planet, worship me indirectly. They take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra. So here Krishna is calling the planet of Indra pious. That's okay, right? And then we enjoy vastly delights, then we come back here. So those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship me, but in a wrong way. I am the only enjoyer. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Yanti devavrata devan pitri yanti pitrivita. Bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopima. Krishna is not denouncing demigods, as you rightly said. They are a part and parcel of Krishna. They are very elevated beings. We should never ever criticize demigods thinking that, they are lower to Krishna. But they are at least above us. They are elevated than us. So we should show our respect to the demigods. However, if I surrender to demigod and think that the demigod is whole and whole, I am surely going to hell. That was Isopanishad is teaching us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
So, it's all about our intention.
Yeah, problem of going to the
Yes. So yes, that was the concept.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Okay, where was we? I have to share my screen back again. So yes, so understand that I mentioned this in the past about Isopanishad. Isopanishad, the Upanishads are books written for Jnana Yogis, for the intellectuals. When you're talking of intellectuals, they need something to speculate about, to think about. If you give them something very straightforward, that here, chant this mantra and go back home, they will not accept it. They need something complex, something more, fancy that can fire their neurons. So, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has given us very clearly: demigod worship, this will happen; me worship, this will happen. But then, when somebody is a Jnana Yogi, they have to be given more details, and some details that push them towards bhakti. That's another purpose of the Upanishads, to gradually nudge people towards the path of bhakti. If you like, so the book about Bhagavad Gita is already about bhakti. So people reading Bhagavad Gita are already in a mode of goodness. But there might be people in a mode of passion. If you tell them, if I go and tell them, hey, fine, demigod worship, go back, Yanti Deva Vrata, you do worship demigod, you go to demigod planet. That will not hit them as hard as telling them that if you worship demigods, you're going to hell. So once again, it's not to denounce the demigods that Upanishad is talking from that perspective. It's more about letting those jnana yogis or the potential readers of the book that, hey, if you do this, this is really going to be harmful. You have come to a jnana yogi platform, don't get misdirected, go forward on bhakti. So they have to been given some harsher instruction. That's also a reason why Upanishad gives such statements. Okay, so we continue. Prabhupada talking about demigod worship. And this is something I request, we all should know this. Bhagavad Gita, demigod worship is talked about in 2 chapters. 7th chapter, 720 to 723. In the 9th chapter, 20th to 25th verse. These things should be accessible to us in our mind, because whenever you are talking to some other people, Shastric evidence is the best. Nothing beats Shastric evidence. I can say whatever I want, but Prem Dham is nothing. But if I can say, oh no, Bhagavad Gita says this, Bhagavatam says this, then I have some weightage in what I'm speaking. So we should know these parts. And Prabhupada is doing exactly that. He's quoting the Shastra, 7th chapter. He's giving us numbers right there. Right? That's important for us to understand it from that perspective. And we should all make a habit of reading Prabhupada's purport in this way. That's why I request all of you to read purports. Whenever you're reading a purport, if Prabhupada is giving a reference, very good, go back and check the reference. Sometimes Prabhupada does not give a reference. He will just rephrase a verse. Then just think, oh, Prabhupada is saying this. Which verse corroborates this? Where is this verse coming from that Prabhupada is quoting? Right? So if somebody comes and tells you that, hey, Krishna is the source of everything. He's the supreme. Which verse will you quote? Let me ask you this way. Which verse will you quote if somebody comes and asks you, can you give me a verse from the Shastras where Krishna is told to be supreme? I'm just asking a question. Can you think of any verses?
Prabhuji, Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parma Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Adi Govinda Sarva Karana.
Yes, see, that should be accessible to you. Then, in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 328, 3rd canto, 28th chapter, is it that it says that Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam.
Yeah.
It says there's a mention of that. So I'm just giving an example. So that if we want to understand Shastras to open up to us, this is one way that has worked very well with me, is that whenever Prabhupada talks about something, I go and try to see where Prabhupada is talking about. What is Prabhupada talking about here? It makes the whole process very relishable for me. Right? For example, in this, when I was reading this, there was a point where Prabhupada is quoting one verse from the 4th chapter. Yes, so he's saying, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarishyo vidhu. Right? So then he's talking about Evam parampara praptam. So he's talking about Acharya worship here. Right? Then I thought, okay, Evam para praptam imam rajarishyo vidhu. That people have learned this knowledge through a parampara. But then I also thought that the second part of the verse, it talks about Evam parampara prapta imam rajarishyo vidhu sa kalena bhata yogo nashta parantapa. That the second part that Krishna is speaking about is that this chain is broken. So that helps us understand the contrast, that if I don't follow the parampara, my knowledge will be lost. So I'm just giving you some examples the way I like doing this. And there are more things Prabhupada will talk in this. I'll show you how. But that's the way it's good to always corroborate, and that strengthens our intelligence when we keep doing it that way. Okay, so going back, yes, so Prabhupada is telling us to worship Krishna, who's the all-attractive. And then Prabhupada talks about demigod worship, and we have all read this in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not going to reiterate that. Okay, so then what keeps going? Respect. Yes. Okay. Yeah, and then Prabhupada is saying that, okay, talked about demigods, now he's talking about the impersonalists, saying that, okay, demigod worship is on one level. But if you have some knowledge, and if that knowledge falls in the hands of dangerous people, that knowledge is really, that's actually worse. And that's what Prabhupada talking about, the people who are impersonal. They go into a deeper hell, right? But then Prabhupada says that Lord states that as soon as one reaches him by devotional service, which is the one and only way to approach the personality of Godhead, one attains complete freedom from the bondage of birth and death. So, the last verse taught us, Vidyam cha tadvedo bhimsa. So, best use of bad bargain. That was one thing Prabhupada taught us. Right? So, again, now Prabhupada is saying that devotional service is the best. We get freedom from birth and death. So, the concept that what we discussed in the last chapter, the last verse was about dharma. Doing our dharma in a way that it aligns with our ultimate dharma of devotional service. Right? So we have to accept that dharma which makes me do Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Right? Prabhupada once Prabhupada said that when he came to this country, America, the hippies have already done the first part. Yet Sarv-dharman parityaja. They had given up everything, right? But then Prabhupada said that I gave them the second part. Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. So he said, Prabhupada, so that I gave them the second part. They had done the first part already. I gave them the second part. So that devotional service, that level, is to be achieved while we go through this material world. That's what is there. Right? Obviously, we avoid sinful professions, but some professions might require activities that are not appropriate. And that's why Krishna says in the 18th chapter, every action has some fault, just like smoke. Dhume nagnir vrita. So, and that's okay. We just try to minimize it to whatever extent we can. Avoid as much bad karma to avoid. But if it is there, we understand that it's a part of this world. The understanding that in the eventually devotional service is the final goal. Right? And when we walk through this material world, our confidence in bhakti increases. And where that comes from is from your own experiences and realization. Personal realization is the ultimate evidence. You have to continue looking at your life in a way that whatever is happening to you, you should look at it as Krishna's mercy and try to take realizations from. I really had a realization this recently, and I realized that I have a lot of pride in my heart. I'm not humble. Recently my work, what happened that I was suddenly pulled into a project that was very new for me. Extremely new. I'd never worked on that thing. I was only pulled in because I had some experience with managing people and so on, so forth. However, that project asked, the requirement of that project was for me to go back into the lab and work with scientists there. So now I'm by position, I'm an associate director. Okay, so the scientist is like 3 grades below me. But I have to go in the lab and I have to sit with the scientist and learn from the scientist the new technology that I'm a part of now. And I cannot tell you how hard it was for me. It took me months and months just to kind of wrap my mind around it that this is for my benefit. I just couldn't accept it. Because my ego was so big that I always felt, oh my God, how can I go to talk to the scientist? It's so shameful for me. I have to learn from a scientist. He's been reporting to me for years now. And that all those things came to my mind. But when all that thing vanished after my lot of thinking, my realization was that, oh my God, I have so much pride in my heart. Even though I can see that in the long run, this is for my benefit. If I learn this technology, I'll have more things in my resume. My resume gets stronger. But I couldn't just convince myself because my pride was so strong. So when we go vidyam cha yes, our personal realizations, our experiences, they provide us that confidence that bhakti is the only thing I want to do in this world. So that's something that I realized recently. Mhm. And then Prabhupada goes on to talk of acharyas. Oh, this is what I'm just quoting, right? They ignore the Vedic injunction, acharya-upasana. So, as I was saying earlier, when you read a purport, like for example, when I read this word, acharya-upasana, I thought, oh, I have heard this word somewhere. Then I remembered that in the 13th chapter, 8th verse, Krishna says this, right? Uh, that he talks of this, acharya-upasanam shocham, uh, Sthiram Atma Vinigraha. He talks in the first verse of that, the 8th verse of the 13th chapter. So Acharya Upasana, worshipping an Acharya. So Prabhupada is saying that those people who are violators of religious principles, they don't even respect authoritative acharyas. That even Prabhupada is quoting from Shastras, people were still opposing him and calling that, oh, Prabhupada is propagating something wrong. They were not accepting what the acharya was telling them, right? So it's actually a sin to do that. Somebody like Prabhupada, an acharya. Acharyas are very special, right? If you look at it from that perspective. A guru, among many gurus, there'll be one acharya, right? All acharyas are guru, but not every guru is an acharya. Right? So acharyas have much higher special capability. They have specialities in them. For example, Prabhupada's speciality was Pashyat-Destarine. No one had done in the past, right? And similarly, if you hear the um, Pranam mantra of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there that Apasiddhanta Dhvanta Harine, that verse comes. So he was removing all deviant ideologies. That was his speciality. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, in his Pranam mantra, we hear Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye. So he was an embodiment of Vairagya, right? So we know Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he was living like a Paramhamsa, even though he was in the material world, right? So if we don't believe that Acharya, we are setting up ourselves for failure. That's what Prabhupada is saying here, right? And that's what Krishna says. When we didn't follow the Acharya, then the path, the line breaks, right? And then Prabhupada is quoting verses from 16th chapter, 19th and 20th verse, where it's been told that uh, that envious people who are envious, especially the impersonalists, they go to hell go to hellish condition. They throw into the darkest regions of hell. That's the 16th chapter towards the end that we are told that. Right. Then there's one thing. I think we are done with that. There's one thing I thought did I miss it? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Oh yeah, here it's towards the end itself. Okay, these rogues are the most dangerous elements in the human society. So that's a very strong statement. They are the most dangerous elements. They are so you know, they are the most dangerous because they distort the very purpose of spirituality, which is to elevate consciousness. The purpose of spirituality is to cultivate compassion. It's to create harmony within individuals, within the society. By using spirituality as a tool for personal gain or for exploiting vulnerable individuals, for corrupting moral values, for undermining, for any of those persons, we immediately poison the community, which creates disillusionment, corruption, division. Right? So that is why Prabhupada is calling these people the biggest rogues in the society. Um, it's a big uh, sin to do what these people do, and we can see this especially in India. There are so many gurus that have like spring up. Some guru bathes in milk and then people drink that milk. I don't know what all nonsense gurus do in India, but people are following them. So these people should go to worse hells than people who worship demigods for sure. Because they are interfering with the progression, the harmony, the compassion, everything in a society. And that is why Prabhupada was very strong against impersonalism. But what one thing Prabhupada did, and we all should also remember, is that Prabhupada never insulted impersonalists. He would challenge them on Shastra, but he was never targeting their person as a person. So we target people's behaviors, but not the people themselves. That's what Prabhupada taught us. Once when Prabhupada was sick, he was in the hospital in it was, I think, 67 or 60. So an impersonalist came to meet him, and Prabhupada told his disciples to get up from the chair and let the impersonalist sit. And Prabhupada used to live with an impersonalist, Dr. Mishra. He used to live in his ashram. He used to cook for Dr. Mishra. But he never accepted the philosophy that Dr. Mishra was propagating. That Prabhupada was strong against. So we should also look at it from that perspective. Yeah, so that's, I think, we have today. Okay, anything from anyone? Any comments, questions, thoughts? Something that we read? Nothing from anyone? Please read purports whenever you can before doing it. Isopanishad is a small book, but it's complicated. It's not straightforward. So when we read the purports, things become clear to us. And we are also able to align it with other Shastras, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam.